Okay, so we have a situation where the database update is not being created. At first, as I responded here, I thought it's a bug because I also tried and I failed. And then, as I was trying to fix the bug, I discovered that it's really not a bug at all. So the only way for me to really demonstrate this is to make a quick tutorial. Okay, so what is the deal here? We want JCB to create SQL. That means in this area, you can get to that area two ways, by either clicking on this little icon or opening the component, and then once it loads the button, you can click on it here. So both of these are effectively able to get you to that place where the update SQL is written. So why is this important? Well, when you add a view or a field, you want JCB to detect that and to create the SQL to add that to your table or the tables, and usually this works. Where this does not work is where a component like this one doesn't have the needed history. Now you could click on this admin views which have been linked to this component, and you do not see the history button here because it is a return, the return variable is added to the URL, this return, and JCB dynamically hides all buttons that will hamper the return behavior. So if you want to see the history of this area, you need to remove this this return value. So you need to scroll to the URL where the return starts and basically take away this whole long string, that it's just that shorter string. Then click enter, and then it will load the normal buttons of this area. So if you now click on version, you see that there is no version here. It could be that that there is one version, but the fact is this component was now installed through JCB being installed into a blank new website. This is a new website I created just for this tickets issue, and so I installed JCB, the latest version. So here we are, activated all the plugins, and we've got our component, and we looked at its updates, at its admin views. It only has one admin view. You can see that I purposefully now click close and not save and close, because I want to keep the history blank to show you the actual behavior. So if I take away the string again, this return value, and I click on history, you still see there is no history here, and I can click close and it won't create a history, but it will keep us in that component admin views area, which is hard to get to. Normally the only way there is by it's by clicking on this link here, or inside the component on this link here. So these are different ways to basically get to this item. Now we chose by design to hide this area because we don't want you to actually create new items here, because then they won't be linked to the actual components. So it's an architectural choice to hide this area and not make it easily accessible. But okay, we've recognized that we have a problem, and I want to now demonstrate exactly what this problem really is by going to this area, adding a view which I've created, my new view. I have not added it to this component before, so I'll just add it here. These values here really plays no role in the matter at all. So I've added the new view, save and close, and now I go over to the compiler, select this component, as we see it's version 1.0, and I compile. And this is the moment we want JCB to add this SQL, but as you see, the version is not incremented, and the SQL is obviously, if I go back to the component, where it is here, no, this one, and I open this SQL area, scroll down to the bottom, I see no SQL was added for the table. So that is the problem. That's the problem that you would get every time when you add a view to a component which doesn't have the necessary history. Now you might say, but wait, I saved that view. So if I go back here, first is clear out this temporal, and then go back to our component and to this area where we added the view, and then remove our return value so we can see the history, which is, I know, not so convenient. And now click version. We now actually have a version, and it has been linked to the current component ID 25, and it is on keep forever. So we now have history, except that this history is linked to this. So JCB literally doesn't know that anything's changed. It thinks this is the way it should be, and so it doesn't know that there was a state before this where there was only one view, because it looks at the version and see, oh, here's one version, and this version actually, yeah, it doesn't want to load. That's a Joomla issue, but the preview is not working in some of the JCB areas because of the encryption, rather the storing mechanism of a subform. The point being, this version doesn't have a version to measure against, to know that things have changed. And for that reason, JCB doesn't do anything. Okay, so what now? Well, there are now a way to fix this. First of all, remove the view, click Save, open version, and now uncheck the Keep Forever and delete the previous version, so that this version is the current state of it without the extra view. So if I go version, even if I delete this and then click Save, this is the version we want. Now this version will still not add any view. So if I at this point go to the component and actually add the view to the component, JCB will still not actually know about this. So the way to, way I can explain this is this version node should have the component's number in it for it to be linked to the component. So since this version node doesn't show the component number, it isn't linked to the component according to the component history. So to give you now a demonstration, I have now removed the extra view, and literally if I refresh this, you'll see there's just one view, and it is also the version that is there. If I now compile, obviously I don't expect JCB to generate any SQL at this point, and obviously it doesn't, so I could just delete this. If I now refresh this though, and I check the version again, I see that it has now added the component and its number to this version. This is very important. This is actually what I mean by the component needs to have history. This history link needs to exist on a old state of the area you're changing. So whether it's the fields that you're linking to a admin view, or whether it's an admin view that you are linking to the component, these two areas are behaving in the same way. So if I now go and add my new view and just say main and then here number 2 and click Save, and I open versions again, you'd see that there's now a new version which doesn't have a node. but it is the latest version according to the timestamp. And we now have you can say the component now will notice that the last time it built itself, it was at this point. And now we'll know, okay, we've moved here, so I need to do things. And to demonstrate, again, I take that same component and I compile it now, having made that change, by adding the view, and bang, it increments. And if I now open the database area and scroll down, then wow, there is the whole table code created, and it has incremented it to 1. So that means the SQL was generated. And if I now close this and refresh this area and open versions again, I'll see that the version was delinked from here and moved to this one. So that means JCB in the compiling process discovered there's a newer version, looked at what's the difference between these two versions, created whatever SQL is required, and delinked it from that version and moved it to now the current version as the one. And the reason for this is because you could actually link a view to multiple components. So the only way for JCB to know that you're busy compiling this component and not that component is actually with this ID mapping that it's adding here. So this ID of the actual component being compiled is the requirement for this functionality to exist. Now, I recognize that this is not as obvious, but would you have been creating the component from scratch, then this would normally be the case. You would build your component to a certain point, and there will be history of everything you've done because you've clicked save in every area. And then the first time you compile the component, it will create that link that I've mentioned, that ID in the notes area of the history. And then if you make a change again in any of those areas, it will notice it and build the SQL. So that means the normal behavior is still working exactly as before. I thought that maybe with the refactoring of the compiler, somewhere we may have misplaced code, but it seems that this is not the case at all. In fact, the compiled code that we're now working with is this code here. It's called the history file. And I've read through this in my debugging just a moment ago. And I must tell you that JCB's history SQL creating code detecting change method has never been as stable as it's at this very moment. It is really very stable, this area. And I could not find anything that made me recognize a bug in the code. So that's why I went back and actually opened the this area here, the component admin views, an area which you can't get to directly without going to this link here. So usually this is how you'd get to that area, and like I said, then it doesn't show the history button. And so the only way to see the history and to understand where there has been a possible mismatch, because I want to now demonstrate to you what will happen if you add the view prematurely without it having the necessary history. And so how I'll do that, I'll first close out here and then open it from this direct link. And I will delete this view and click save. Oh, in fact, you know what? I'm gonna open up this area, unclick the forever, and delete all history from this area, and refresh it quickly to make sure everything is removed. So this is how it will look like, having not, once you've imported a component or having started with a component and the history in that area is not there for some reason. And I don't know what the reason would be, but assuming that's possible. So you might come here and say, okay, wait, I'm going to just fix that quickly and save and close. Oh, wait, this is not the area. This area here. I'm going to come in here and save and close. So now you have some history. So you think, okay, fine, I've got history. So let me now open this area again and now add the admin view. Sorry, this one here. And again, these values really don't matter at this point with this feature. Save and close. And if I now go to the compiler, and so theoretically, what we've just done, if I can quickly find that area again, open up here, take away the return. It's always a bit of a challenge taking out that return. And then view version. We have now two versions, you see, okay, but none of them are linked to the component. So at this point, if I compile the component, so I go and say compile, oh, wait a minute, I have to fix another problem. I should have fixed it first. Let me check that out quickly. So what I should have done, and I will still do, is I'm going to again start here fresh. By going save and then version, and then just remove these. Okay, so refreshing, we have nothing. I'm going to close it as if, yeah, okay. Now the place I have to fix as well is the actual code here. Okay, so I want this code not to be here, as if we are starting with a blank component. So I'm basically reversing whatever we've done. Save and close. Okay, so here we go. We're back at version 2.10, and this version, if we open the admin views, it just has one view. So I save and close because I wanted to have history, and that's what I saw you do in your video. But now, having created the admin view and now adding it, and basically doing it the wrong way, because what you should have done instead of adding it now is first compile the component, and that's a key part. And if we don't do it like I'm doing now, I'm not doing it. So if I now go and compile the component, so we compile it, you will see that it will not create the SQL and it does not increment the version. So if we go back to that area and we open it, you'll see that it added the component, but to the latest version, and because it wasn't linked to the previous one, it didn't know anything changed. This is what helps it know that something changed. And without this, it cannot know. So this means if I untick this and delete this, for example, now we are in that state. We save, quickly open version, and we delete this. Yeah, so it's like this. This is the current version, the two views. If I compile the component, you'll see it will add the component ID to that version. So it didn't increment it, and if we refresh this this page, we'll see that yes, it has added the version here. Okay, but now this version is the one with both views. So if I remove the view and save and compile like this, it will still not write any SQL, because JCB doesn't write SQL, see, to remove things from the database. That's a very dangerous thing to do, because you might want to do something else with the data through some install script. And so we're not going to assume that you removing a view must also dump that table from your client's database. If you want to do that, you should write your own custom script to do that. Okay, so what has happened here, if I open the version, wait, I first need to refresh it. We will now see that it is linked to the current state is linked to this smaller, only one view version of the component. So if I now, after all that, add the new view and make it the second one and save, The shocking thing is, opening the version, there's no new version. Why? Well, Joomla this detects that the current set of information hashes to the same value as this version, and so it doesn't create a new version. This means it falls back to an outdated version because of the fact that there is a version where the view was already added in the past. This is a bit confusing, I know, but look at the outcome. The outcome is you come here, you think, okay, well, now I've done the history thing and it's all done, and you do compile, and bang, it still does not create the SQL and it doesn't increment the version. So what? That's the issue. That's the frustration, right? You've done everything right and still it didn't work. But no, you actually didn't do everything right, because what you should have done is you should have removed this old outdated version like this. Now click Save, open again, and you'll see now you have a new version, and we're talking about this date stamp, and it is the newer one, which means if I now compile, look at this, it's going to write the SQL because it's going to detect a newer version. And yeah, we don't need this. Okay, and now it will write the SQL, it will increment the version, kabang, see, the version is incremented. And if I even remember, if we look at it now, the version is moved from this one up to that one, to the bigger amount, which is the two views. So it's now written the SQL for these two views. And if I go back to the component, the updates area, it's also written the SQL for the update and incremented the version. So everything worked exactly as you would expect. But it was because your versioning was correct. I don't know if I've confused you more at this point. So I'm going to step through it one more time. But before I do, I'm going to reverse all of this again. And I think that in itself is also helpful, I suppose, so that you would see the natural way of how it should work if everything is done correctly. I'm basically removing all the versions and clicking Save so that there is again one version. I'm going to just delete it again and close it. So now we know there is no version. This area literally does not have a version. Okay, good. I'm going to leave it like that for now. And I'm going to start as someone who doesn't know all these details I've just explained. One more thing, I have to just take back the SQL as well. So we don't, because JCB actually can detect that the SQL exists and then will not create it. It actually does that. So I'm just going to remove the SQL, remove the version, save and close, and it will automatically move my component back to the previous version. Okay, so now we are starting like someone who has imported a component from one JCB to another. This is where I see the issue really exists. So now we are on that page. We open the admin views with the current view. We save and close. We go to the compiler. We select the component. We compile. Okay, and then we clear that compilation. Then we go to the admin views again, and we add our new view. Obviously that may have taken longer because you might still have to go create it. It doesn't matter when you create that view. It's not the view's creation that's being tracked, it's the view being linked to the component, and I hope that's become clear by now. And so you save and close, and now if you compile, JCB will create the SQL. And that's really all there is to it. Look, version is incremented and the table data has been added, and that is all that is required. It's just that save and compile step. It's not just saving it, it's saving and coming here and compiling it before adding this new either field, because this also is what will be required. If I go to admin views, you have these admin fields. Now the admin fields, they work in exactly the same way. I'm opening this admin fields. So if I remove this return, it has the same return setting. If I remove that and look at versions, you'll see, okay, it has history, and it is, okay, this is the new view. The new view that I created has history. That's not the best example. The old view, look. The look view does not have history. See, it's empty. So if I, at this point, go to the admin's views, and I go to this admin fields, and I I could just add a field that itself should be enough to trigger, but already many of the fields are here. So maybe the best example would be not to change the field here, but to go to the fields area and maybe open website and change this from varchar to text. This is a SQL writing event. And would there have been history here, this history, then JCB would write the SQL for the URL field to change this field from varchar to text. This is part of what JCB does. So I'm basically doing it the wrong way now. So we're going to try and first show you that it will not make that change by clicking save here and then going to compile. And we will find that it will stay on 2.1.1, see? And if we open the component area and we look at the updates area, we will see that no update SQL was written. And so, but if we now open the versions, we'll see there is now a version and it has actually a number. Okay, so it means, we should have first compiled with version in place before making this change. Okay, so what would that mean now? Well, that means now I delete this version. If I want to fix the problem, I take it back to the varchar. I think it was, now I'm in trouble. Okay, so it was 255. And if I now look at this, it doesn't have version, but I'm going to now save it so that it has a version. Okay, good. Now there is a version. Then I'm going to come here and compile it. So just compile it now. Having not made a change, but haven't given that field a version. If I now check the version, I'll see that JCB has now linked the component to this version of this field. And if I now make a change, so I'm going to make that change and save it, we have now a newer version. After this link, there is now a newer version, which now reflects this change, okay? And if I now compile, we're going to go from 2.1.1 to 2.1.2. Look at this. And it worked. Okay, so what happened? If we open versions, we see, it detached from here and moved to there. And if I now go to the components updates area and scroll down, we'll see that it incremented the version and it wrote the SQL to change the website to text not null, altering the table. That is how it works. So this is related to the actual field. Now, if you are planning on adding a new field, JCB will behave in the same way. So let's close out of here, and then we go to a admin view. And in this case, the one that will make most sense is my new admin view, because it already has all the necessary history. if we look at this area here, this linked fields area is the place which the history is required. So if I remove the, well, this will be more challenging. Let me go out here, close out here, and then click on this link instead. Now I can remove that return value again, because the other link had more values in it that will still block the version from showing. This link has only return value, and only removing that's enough. So if I open up here, we see that we have a version and it is already linked to the component, and the older version was less. So if I now add another field here, which will be in our case just using website, that's a good one, and it doesn't really matter any of these things here, so I'm just going to save that. Now, having done that, we have a new version and the old version is here. So again, we have 1.1.2. If I now just wipe out this and compile, I will see that JCB detects this new field and voila, increments the version. If we open the database area, the update area, we'll see that it's now added to the new admin view, my new view, website, after name. Yeah, altering the table. So it detected the change, and it only could because when we look at this, and if I close it here, you see where it's now, right? It's on the third one. If I close it and open it again, you'll see, because it's Ajax driven, it's moved it from the third one to now the first again, and this is now the point from which it will detect change again. So if you divert back to any of these previous ways that the view or the area was, JCB will not detect any change. So it's literally critical that if you're going to do that, that you remove these old states and make sure that the version that you're targeting the change is above the current linked version. So in the fields area it's easy, but in these admin fields areas where we are actually linking it to the admin view, it's a little hard to get to the version, and I recognize that that's kind of a challenge. I don't know if we should make it possible to open the versions. Maybe that should be something I should look at, so that if you come here, let's say the normal way would then obviously be clicking on this button here, that it still shows versions, because obviously this automated SQL feature is very tightly linked into the Joomla version integration, and those notes with the actual component IDs are a critical part of this area working as the way you would expect it to work. I hope that this resolves the problem that you are facing, and that you will now find that yes, JCB still works the way it should, and that this is merely a version mismatch problem. Well, thanks for watching, and looking forward to your feedback. Until next time, take care.